children's minister, Katie, when she was in college, she went and spent 6 months in Zimbabwe. And that was a video she took when she was in Zimbabwe. She took lots of videos of them dancing during their church services while she kind of just stood there awkwardly. I'm sure that's really hard for those of you that know her well to imagine Katie just standing awkwardly while people are dancing around her. But then she brought those videos back home to her home church at the time, and she showed these videos while she was giving a report to her church. So she showed these videos to all of these Midwesterners and tried to replicate on stage the dances for them. It didn't go well. But that's her story. You'll have to ask her about it after the service. She may even, if you ask nice enough, she may do that dance for you. I doubt it. But so have you ever felt like really out of place or super uncomfortable in a situation you found yourself in, like just having this immediate reaction of, oh, these aren't my people, this isn't my scene, this is not my type of thing. I had plenty of those moments in college at OCC whenever Janie was around, which it was a small school, so that was always my entire junior and senior year. But those are different stories for another time, and I'm talking, so I get to decide whether or not I embarrass myself, and we're not going to today. So what about at a church? Right? So who here has ever been to a different church before? That probably should hopefully be everybody, right? So have you ever gone somewhere and then immediately, like the moment you walked in the door, felt super out of place? Does that ever happen? Right? It doesn't even necessarily have to be that they were doing anything wrong or being mean. It just wasn't you. All right, so at OCC, we had this class my freshman year called Foundations of Christian Worship, and one of our assignments was we were supposed to go to different churches, like very different churches, have a different experience, and then write about it when we got back. So 5 of us did this together, and the first place we went to was a Jewish temple. And so that was interesting. They were super kind to us, but I distinctly remember this moment towards the very beginning of the service when they opened like this secret compartment on the back of the stage. There's just this door that opened up that I didn't even know was there, and they brought out this massive scroll. Like it was legitimately like this big. And then everybody in attendance, which wasn't that many, like 50 people maybe, but everybody who was there just suddenly stood up. They started hooting and hollering, and then they paraded around the sanctuary. They marched, they got in a line behind this scroll, and they did this little parade behind the sanctuary. They were chanting something we couldn't understand. And people were like spinning in circles and stuff, and they got back around, and then they read from the scroll. The really nice guy in front of us, after he got back from doing whatever it was he was doing, he kindly explained to us, it's a celebration. It is a celebration every single time we get to read from God's Word, which I thought was kind of cool. It was still weird, though. But our second experience, we went to an all-black church. That was fun. The preacher, who I will say was getting a lot more enthusiasm than I've ever gotten here from you guys, but that's all right. He suddenly just broke out in song in the middle of his sermon. He just started singing. He got down off the stage. He was dancing around. He was parading up and down the aisles, and he just rapped like the entire second half of his sermon. For like 15 minutes, he was just like freestyling it, and just everybody stood up. They were clapping, dancing. There was this 90-year-old woman just like breakdancing in the aisle right next to me. You laugh like I'm making that up. Like that was actually happening. And then you just look, and there are like these 3 little white boys just sitting there looking scared. That was me. Our third experience was at a Catholic Mass. And when you hold that compared to the other 2, it was quieter, with more people falling asleep than even happens here when I talk. So it kind of makes us look like a lively bunch. But I really did value those experiences. They taught me a lot. But one of them was this, that things that we are used to, things that we think are normal, other people can think are a little different. Somebody can come in here and it can make them uncomfortable, make them feel a little weird. It doesn't have to be bad things that make people not like church. although it can be. Obviously, it can be. Tom Rainer wrote a column about interesting church experiences. He put this out in an article in a magazine. He had people write in and share their interesting church experiences. One woman was told that she would probably be a better fit in a different church because she was African American. Another guy got honked at in the parking lot and waved off as a person yelled out of his car window that he can't have that parking spot because it's his. Another woman was told that she needed to find a new church because of the way she dressed. A whole family of 6 with a single mom was told that they were in my seat, so they had to move. Another guy was told that he was singing too loud. I think that one's kind of funny. There is something to be said about loud music. It kind of drowns all of that stuff out. Another person pulled a first-time visitor aside to warn him how terrible the preacher was at this church. Which, I'm just the youth guy, so you only have to put up with me a couple of times a year. So that's fine. All right, so maybe you've experienced that, maybe worse, maybe better. But the point is that we have all had our own variety of experiences and stories in our life that have led us to form our own opinions, our own box of what church is and is not supposed to be. And maybe it would be good for us to think outside the box a little bit. So I just want to wrestle with that a little bit this morning while we go through a passage in 1 Peter. We're going to jump right in 1 Peter chapter 2, starting in verse 9. It says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." So just a quick little bit of background about this. Peter is writing to a very diverse group of people over a very large geographic area called Asia Minor, which would be about present-day Turkey. So this can get sticky here really fast, though, because we're talking about the word chosen. And that can be kind of a buzzword in the church because you'll get some people that will go to predestination. I'm chosen, you're not. I'm in, you're out. That's a little beyond the scope of what I want to talk about today. But what we are talking about is this. The God that we see in the Bible is a God that loves every single person on the planet, regardless of age, race, gender, orientation, you name it. So much so that he sent his son to die for all of us. In fact, in Peter's second letter that he writes, he says that God is patient with everyone and that he doesn't want a single person on the whole planet to perish, but he wants every single person, to be able to know, to have an opportunity to know what life with his son could be like. So based on what Peter is writing here, what God is having Peter write here, it seems like he wants this thing we do on Sunday mornings called church. And I know we're the church, but I'm specifically talking about our gatherings on Sunday morning, church, to be a place where all people can experience what life with Jesus could be like. So let's start with this. Church should be a place where everyone belongs. Church is a place for all people, not just a place for church people. And there's a church back home in Colorado Springs. It's called Discovery. My mom attends, and my mom's here this morning. She attends there. She used to work there for a long time. She's recording me acting like these things don't end up online anyway. But I've actually taken our students to church at Discovery on Saturday nights a couple of times now to start off our trip to Camp Como. We start with Church at Discovery because I love that place. I love what they are doing in Colorado Springs because they are doing something that not many other churches in Colorado Springs are doing, and that is reaching out to people that don't like church. So it goes like this every single week. Every single week he gets up on stage and he says, "We aren't people that tolerate people like you, fix people like you, used to be people like you. We really are people just like you. We all have parts of our story that we wish read differently, and we're just chasing after a better way to live, and we think that Jesus offers that." And that church is doing something incredible, but because of that, they've attracted a lot of people who have felt burned by other churches, who have felt uncomfortable at other churches, who have been treated poorly at other churches. So it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon to see alcohol around or to see a person smoking in the parking lot outside. It's not uncommon to see people dressed in like less than church-appropriate clothing. There's a pastor, Judd Wilhite. He's a pastor of a large church in Las Vegas. He's an OCC alumni, and he came back to one of our chapel services one time while I was a student, and he told us stories about some of the ministries that they're doing out there. They have a really, really successful and vibrant homeless ministry that they operate out of the church, but they also have a very successful ministry to exotic dancers, which is awesome, and a lot of them end up coming to church. They come to church for the very first time to this church, and they don't have lots of church-appropriate clothes. They show up rather scantily clad to church there, which I think is awesome. It's great. It's great, right? But if that makes you uncomfortable, if those thoughts of people like that being here makes you uncomfortable, good. For the love of God, and I'm not swearing, I'm saying for the love of God, get over your comfort. Because it is our comfort that is keeping 2/3 of Carl Junction out of church every single week. This relies on all of us. All it takes is one single person making one comment, giving one look to make someone feel like they don't really belong here. Right? So I know we don't get this perfect every single time. There's no way we will ever get this perfect every single time. But I do know of, personally, I know of three different moments in the last 3.5 years that I've worked here, where a visitor had a poor experience here. And these came to my attention because one time I knew the person who was visiting. The other 2 times I just knew the person who had invited the person, and they came and told me about it. But they at least 3 times they were not treated the best by church people, and every time they said that they're never going to come back, which is really, really sad. And I'm not going to name names here. That's not the point. The point is that if we aren't all actively making sure that everyone knows they belong the minute they walk in this door, some people may never feel that. And at least 3 times in the last 3 years, as a church as a whole, myself included, we failed at that. But in most churches, the progression goes kind of like this. If you believe what we believe and you become like us, then you belong here. And it's supposed to be the exact reverse of that. What if we, at Fur Road, what if we committed to becoming a church that says, hey, just come belong with us? Well, okay, what does it take to belong? Well, just walk in the door. Boom, you belong. That's it. Hang out with us here. Now, hopefully, over the course of time, as you have the opportunity to experience what life with Jesus could be like, as you get to see us living it out, maybe you'll come to believe in Him like we do, and you can start to walk this journey with us of being transformed to become more like Him, to become everything He made you to be, but you belong from day one. And Jesus walked with messy people, and the most common question He was asked was, why do you hang out with them? Why do you talk with them? Why do you eat with them? Is the church not supposed to be modeling Jesus' life? So another way to put it, a pastor I know, the pastor at Discovery, his name is Greg, he says that most churches are like hospitals, which is good, but Jesus wanted them to be more like MASH units, military outposts. He said the big difference being that hospitals have admission requirements. Oh, you need help? All right, here, let me ask you a few questions. A lot of questions, actually. Fill out this paperwork. Let me verify your insurance before we decide whether or not we're going to be able to help you. When a MASH unit is different, who in here saw the old TV show, MASH? It's like an old sitcom. All right, that was before my time, but I have seen a couple of reruns of it. But what happens in that show, what happens when the helicopter comes in, what does everybody do? Yet they run. They drop everything and they run. They run directly toward the mess. Why would they run toward the mess? All right, so they can make sure that they get everybody inside as fast as possible so that they can get the help that they need. And what if the church just did that? Or what if our goal was to run directly toward the mess so they could get the help that they need? And not get them in the door so that they can learn to read through the Bible in a year, not get them in the door so that they can memorize more scripture, not get them in the door so they can learn to cuss less or switch to light beer, or better yet, learn to hide their beer like all good Christians do. Like what? Those are all good things. But what people really need is Jesus. All right, so He in the Spirit can give them the help that they need. Did you know the people in combat have a 96% chance of survival if they just get inside a MASH unit? That's what they say. That's the statistic they gave us. 96% chance of survival if they just get inside a MASH unit. But is that true of church? Shouldn't it be? Shouldn't they feel so much acceptance, so much belonging, so much power for life change here that they just never want to leave? That if they were to just come here, they would not want to leave, that they would have a 96% chance of survival because they got to experience what life with Jesus could be like. In his book, Unlearning Church, Mark Slater writes, "In church we often miss the heart of God, which is focused on people not yet around the table. The plan of Jesus was simple: change the world by serving one person at a time, influencing one person at a time, and connecting one person at a time to God." So Peter starts here with, "You are a chosen people." Do you feel chosen? A lot of us struggle to believe that, so let me ask you a question. Why are you here today? There can be lots of answers to that question. I love it here. I came here. My mom made me. My life is a mess. I don't know why. I have always been here. I think God tracks attendance, so I always go to church. There's lots of possible answers, but let me suggest a different one that applies to every single person in here, no matter how your story reads, past or present. You are here because God chose you. He orchestrated the facts and circumstances of your life to bring you here together with us this morning because He loves you that much, because you matter to Him that much. Church really ought to be a place where we just come in and we feel that. Let's read those verses again, just the same verses again, and catch something else that I want to catch that's also really significant. It says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." Let's remember who Peter is writing to here. He's not writing to missionaries. He's not writing to a large group of pastors at a conference. He's writing to a bunch of normal people in Turkey. All right, so what does that mean? It means that you are a royal priest. And when we hear that, we really only have two problems with it. The first is the word royal, and the second is the word priest. All right? So it's a little weird, but turn to your neighbor and tell him you are a royal priest. No, don't do that. That's weird. It's awkward. It's strange, but it's true. Right? It's true. We are a royal priest. Church is a place where everyone belongs, but church should also be a place where everyone becomes. Right? Where do you go to church? I go to Fur Road. Why? Oh, I belong there. I feel like I belong there. That's why I go there. Well, that's great. So who are you becoming? Are you growing? Are you changing? Are you becoming more like Jesus? So John Peterson, in his book called Unraveled, Reform the Church, Transform the Culture, he wrote this. He said, "Today, in my opinion, Christian has become too nebulous a term. Many who call themselves Christians are not actual disciples of Christ. It becomes too much about the point-of-sale method of conversion, of saying the prayer, and not concerned enough with what it actually takes to make Jesus Lord of our life. Do we just agree with Jesus, or are we actively working to be transformed into His image? The difference is huge." The difference is huge. So here it is. Chosen is something we are, always, automatically. Royal priests is something that we become. Now, in Greek, the word royal would more literally translate dedicated, consecrated, kingly. Most of us don't feel like that most of the time. Most of us don't feel super dedicated, consecrated, not always, and we really don't feel like priests either, people who are just intended with their whole life to bridge the gap between humanity and God. So let me talk about that for just a second. There was a group of American pastors that went to visit the church of Charles Spurgeon back in the late 1800s. He's a big mega evangelist guy over in England, if you don't know that name. But they were taking a tour of his facility, and Charles Spurgeon says, hey, do you want to go down and see like the power source for this place? And they said no, thinking he was going to go show them a furnace. But he insisted, so they went down into the basement and through a dark hallway, and he opened up a door at the end. And inside was a bunch of people on their knees praying. And Charles got a big smile on his face, and he said, "This is my boiler room." And over the course of his life, as people would ask him what the source of success is in his ministry, he would just give them a 3-word answer: "My people pray." So I tell you that, maybe if you don't feel like a priest, maybe that's on me. Because as I heard that story last week, I kind of started to wonder, how am I doing as a model in this? How often am I down on my knees using prayer as the power source for this place? Am I really teaching our students to do this? In John's book, he also writes this: Paul was an apostle and priest before God, commissioned to create other priests who know how to span heaven and earth under a kingdom mandate. This is the hill we leaders in the church need to be willing to die on. Paul was a priest who made sure other people knew they were priests, who taught them to bring heaven to earth and taught them to lead people to Jesus on their own. So what if I started really fleshing out what this looks like? What if we as a church started taking discipleship a little more seriously and fleshed out what it really looks like? Not just learning Bible stuff, but how is God transforming your heart? And what if we started more intentionally developing leaders who can go and do the same? What if when I graduated students out of our student ministry, what if I was sending a bunch of people who were prepared to minister with their entire lives? What could this place look like? So that's on me, but we're actually going to talk about that a little bit more next week. So let's just keep going through and catch the next couple of verses before we wrap this thing up. If we jump over to verse 11, it says, "Dear friends, I urge you, as foreigners and exiles, to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and may glorify God on the day He visits us." Okay, just an aside, don't call your friends pagans. It's not a good idea. It won't go over very well. It's actually not supposed to be that offensive of a word, but just don't do it. But I love how Peter ends this section here. You are not citizens of this world. He goes on to say, submit yourselves to governing authorities anyway, but you aren't citizens of this world. We don't care about America first. We don't care about Fur Road first. Now, before anybody gets too carried away here, that doesn't mean we detach ourselves and hide and bunker down and protect ourselves from the world and just pretend like nothing else is happening. He says, no, I want you to live such good lives among your friends around you. Don't call them pagans, but among your friends around you. Live such good lives with them, among them, so that what? So that they see me. It points them to Jesus. So one last thing about this thing called church. Church should be a place that is never about the place. Peter says, yes, we are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, but this is not Fur Road Nation. It's not all about us. The point is not how connected we are to each other on any given weekend. That's a good thing. It's just not the point. But how connected we are to people outside of this place. How well are we connecting people outside of this place to Jesus? And what if that became our priority? What if we cared just a little bit less about ourselves, our comfort, what we want our little church to be like, and the programs that we wished we had? And what if our singular goal, our sole purpose, was to just become a bridge between our community and Jesus? What could happen? How could that look? So we can span that gap and give our community an opportunity to experience what life with Jesus could be like, to experience all the hope, love, and healing that Jesus could offer, does offer. What could that look like? Things like the Big Serve. What if that wasn't just a one Sunday event for us? What if we found ways every week to serve people in need through places that serve people in need every single day? What if that just became a part of our DNA at this place? What if we took more seriously our adoption of the 2-3 building? I think Katie does great work with that. But what if we took more seriously our adoption of the 2-3 school building just down the street? What if we took our role as a bridge between those students and teachers and Jesus so seriously that our school could say that they don't have a single kid that's in need of a coat or food to bring home on the weekends? And they could say that our teachers don't feel completely overwhelmed because they have received a mountain of support from a group of people that just really loves Jesus. What if we became a place where everyone knew that they belonged from the moment they walked in the door, and where they knew that they could experience the love, hope, and healing of Jesus if they came here and spent time with us? And before I start waxing on about all the great things that I think we could accomplish in this place if we understood bridging the gap between our community and Jesus as our primary purpose in gathering, I'm just going to stop talking and let you think about it. What if your goal this week was to bridge the gap between one single person that you know and Jesus? What if that was our goal this week, to bridge the gap between one person you know and Jesus? What could that look like? And what could maybe happen? Will you pray with me? God, thank you so much for this place called church, this thing we do called church. Thank you so much for Fur Road and really the great things that you have done through us over the past 38 years. God, I'm so grateful for everything we do, but I just ask that you give us a continued passion to just move a little further, to love our city so much that they can start to see you through us and through all the things that we do together here. God, I just ask that you be with us this week as we go out and try to do that, and as we continue to worship this morning. We love you. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.